Hi, this is Jeremy Schoonmaker, Pre-Sales Technical Consultant for the HP Channel MPS Group. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can scan to SharePoint using the embedded features in an enterprise MFP. Microsoft has deprecated basic authentication, and so scanning to SharePoint requires a modern authentication method now. And so that's changed how scan to SharePoint is used by a lot of customers. So this video is intended to show you the various methods that are available just using the embedded features of the device. There are available software applications for HP MFPs that will allow you to scan to SharePoint as well, including HP WorkPath apps and software like HP SecurePrint, but those are going to be covered in a different video. I have 4 methods to show you, so let's go ahead and dive in. The first is using a modern authentication as part of the Scan to SharePoint app. So I'm going to open the Scan to SharePoint app and show you how that looks. So I'll load my SharePoint URL that I'd want to scan to, and I'll click Send. What this is going to do is it's going to launch into a browser-based authentication. It looks exactly like it would if you were trying to sign in to Microsoft from your phone or from any sort of PC. I would type in an email address, and based on the domain that's going to be here, it's going to take me to my organization's sign-in page. So my sign-in is going to look a little bit different than yours, but in general, it's going to be the same sign-in that you would see if you logged in from a PC. After typing in my username and password, you see that I'm going to be brought to my company's two-factor authentication process. So this is going to be, again, reflected on whatever company is using this. Once I'm done authenticating using that online authentication process, it's going to verify that I have access to the folder, and then it's going to send the job. Now what you'll see is that this login lasts as long as the screen doesn't time out. So as soon as the screen times out or I log out as a user, I'm going to have to start over. But as long as I don't, if I just go back and click send a second time, you'll see that it doesn't require me to go through that process a second time. But if I would reset the screen and then go back into Scan to SharePoint and choose the same path, as soon as I click send, it's going to ask me for that authentication over again. So again, this authentication is good for as long as the screen's active, and as soon as it times out, then you'll have to authenticate again. And you can see, I'm going to pull up that SharePoint. You can see that these jobs did land in the SharePoint correctly. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the second method, which is to use an embedded feature we call protected access for Microsoft Entra ID. So you can enable this here in the embedded web server device on the security tab and access control. You would choose Microsoft Entra ID, you'd go through the setup here, and once it's activated, you can choose this as the sign-in method for Scan to SharePoint. So I'm going to require that authentication for doing any Scan to SharePoint. And of course, my computer timed out on me. Sorry about that. Okay, so security, access control, and enable Microsoft Entra ID and require it for Scan to SharePoint. Okay, now let's go back to the screen of my MFP. When I reset the screen, you'll see this is now locked because it's requiring that authentication. When I click on Scan to SharePoint, it's going to launch into this new authentication method. Now, what this is going to ask us to do is to scan the QR code with a mobile device and then enter in this code, and then it will log us in using the mobile device as kind of the authenticator. So I'm going to pull over. Here is my screen, and I'm going to launch a camera. So I'm going to scan that, and you see it brings me to a URL for Microsoft device login, and I would enter in this code. Now this code's going to be different every single time that you go here. So it's not an individual code that you can use every time. It's different each time. It's alphanumeric. You'd enter it in. And then you're going to choose the account that is from the phone that you've logged into that you want to use. So I'm choosing my HP account here. And it's going to ask me if I'm signing in, and I push continue, and now I've signed in. Now, just so you're aware, if you haven't logged in or authenticated on your mobile device, you're going to have to go through an authentication process. In my organization, we seem to need to do that once a day, and so I had to do that earlier this morning. But now that I'm in, that's the entire flow. Is I scan the QR code, type in the 10-digit code, and then you can see that now I can load this, send the document, and just like before, I don't have to do anything else on the front panel. It's much faster to do over and over to use this phone authentication method. It's called, again, protected access. And what we should see is that here in my SharePoint site, that the document should appear. And you see that this one right here just appeared a few seconds ago. So that works just fine. And again, it's a little bit faster method than typing it all in on the front panel. So that's method number 2. Okay, moving to method number 3, that's to use the scan to folder function of the device to scan to a local folder on your machine that's synced to the SharePoint. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is in the SharePoint site, you can click here and sync this folder. In fact, let me move over here to my desktop sync folder. I can sync this folder, and then it will use the OneDrive app that's installed on my machine to create a folder that is synced to the SharePoint. What that means is anything that gets dropped into this folder then ends up in SharePoint. So I can use the device's scan to network folder feature, and I can put in that folder path. So this would be the folder path for that shared folder that I have there. And then I can go ahead and click scan and send, and it would drop into the network folder, and that'll end up in the SharePoint. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm actually not able to do scan a network folder on my PC due to company security policies, but I'll show you that if I have a file that I just drop into this folder, then it should sync to my SharePoint site. And there you go. I just dropped it in, and it's in there now. Last modified as I created this document 3 hours ago. But anything that gets dropped into that folder gets synced into this folder in SharePoint, and you can create that sync wherever you like and create that folder on your desktop wherever you like. You just use the scan to network folder feature of your MFP to get those files there. Now, moving to the last method is somewhat similar, but a little bit more complicated. We're going to use the scan to email function of the MFP, but we're going to sync it to SharePoint using an application called Power Automate. Now, my disclaimer is that I am not an expert in Power Automate. I did a lot of searching online for this information, and I would suggest if this is a method that you'd like to use, you focus on finding this information online. But what I did find is that here in Power Automate, there is a template called Save My Email Attachments to a SharePoint Document Library. So I was able to create a workflow, and what happens is that Power Automate syncs with your other Office 365 applications. And so it can monitor your email and say, hey, when you get a new email with an attachment, and then I can have it come down here and say, hey, I want to scan it and send it to my SharePoint folder. So because we're using all the same service, which is Office 365, we can tie these things together. Now, in my workflow, I made just a few changes, which is I made a filter based on what email address it's coming from. So if you have a specific email address that your MFP is sending from, and you want to put it in there, that would be useful so that you can filter out emails that don't come from that email address. And then I created a very specific subject filter here. So something that I don't think would naturally come from anywhere else. So I used the string SP auto send in the subject line. So what this workflow is going to do is it's going to look for any emails with an attachment from this email address using this subject, and those will get dropped into my SharePoint, into a specific folder that I define. So you can create this. I'm sure there's other filters and exclusions and things that you can make in here. Again, not being an expert in Power Automate, I don't want to venture into that, but I will show you that here in Scan to SharePoint, I've created a Scan to SharePoint quick set with email, and what you'll see is that it does come from that email address, and I can lock the from, the to, and the subject in here. So I've created this subject SP AutoSend, which matches my filter requirement in Power Automate. And so now I can click send, and this page will get scanned and it will get sent, and it's going to drop in and land in my email first. And then after it lands in my email, it's going to get pulled in by Power Automate into the SharePoint application. I'm here in Power Automate just so you can see. I was testing this earlier, but I'm going to refresh these flows. I need to wait for a minute for it to deliver to my inbox. Here's my email client. You can see that that email got here at 12:57. And now again, going over here to Power Automate. I'm waiting for this to run. There it goes, 12:57. That succeeded. And so now it should be, if I pull up my scans folder, you can see that here's the document and it just arrived a few seconds ago. So again, through the scan to email process, I'm able to automate a workflow that ends up delivering the scanned document into SharePoint. So again, these are all methods that are available for you to scan to SharePoint from the front panel of your MFP without having to use any additional licenses that you purchase from HP or a third party. Just to review, we can use the embedded authentication as part of Scan to SharePoint where we're doing an Office 365 authentication. We can use the protected access where we're scanning the QR code to sign in. I can do a synced folder on my desktop that's synced with the OneDrive app to a specific SharePoint folder and use the Scan to Folder application, or I can set up a workflow in Power Automate to watch my email with specific filter criteria, and then Power Automate can take those attachments from my email and drop them into my SharePoint folder. So that is the ways that I know that are available for scanning to SharePoint from the front panel.